Hey everyone, so in today's video I wanted to take a look at two tried and tested military light fighters, the Gladius and the Arrow. These are both solid ships, and I think it's always fun to see how Star Citizen's ships stack up against each other since they're all generally pretty unique. Before we start though, if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and or subscribing, or if you really want to help me out you can become a member. Thank you for all of your support. Alright, so just for a little background about each of these ships, both the Gladius and the Arrow are military light fighters that are used by the UAE Navy. The Gladius is a pretty old design, both in the verse and just in terms of when it was developed, and the Arrow is actually much newer, only arriving in 2018. And while both of these are light fighters, and are both very solid ships, they differ in their approach a bit. The design philosophy of the Arrow seems to be to have a ship that is pretty fast, very nimble, and very difficult to hit, and to accomplish that nimbleness it has one less shield generator than the Gladius and likely less armor plating as well. It also has a much smaller cross section though, making it much harder to land shots on. The Gladius on the other hand is a bit more rugged, a bit larger, and has two small shield generators instead of just one, so it can take a couple of hits. And it's not quite as maneuverable as the Arrow, but it's not sluggish either, and in a straight line it's about as fast. As for weaponry, they both have the same hardpoints, although the Arrow can mount a dual size 1 turret on its top hardpoint in addition to the regular options of a fixed size 3 or gimbaled size 2. The Gladius does have a bit of an advantage in missile capacity, but other than that and the shields, they're very closely matched in terms of their specs and hardpoints. And just like you'd expect because of that, they're very closely matched for performance, at least for PvE. PvP changes so often and is about to change again with the new systems coming in 3.14, and right now the Talon is the best light fighter anyway, but I'm sure they're eventually going to work towards balancing these two to be very comparable when you're going against another one that's controlled by a player as well. They are both used by the military, and I don't think the military would keep both of them around if one of them was just outright better. Now in terms of their roles in the Navy, they are a bit different. The Arrow is more of a carrier ship with its overall small design and wings that fold up to save even more space so that you can carry a ton of these in any ship with a hangar. The Gladius isn't quite as compact, but with how old of a design it is and just the general ruggedness it seems to have, I imagine they're going to require a lot less maintenance in the verse than an Arrow would, and that could probably make them useful for a lot of roles, since getting spare parts might be a bit of a pain in some parts of the verse. Also, being such a long-standing fighter, they're probably well known by the pilots, which is another plus. But yeah, both of these have a place, even though they're pretty similar in some ways, and if you guys want to try them out yourselves but haven't gotten the chance to, they're actually pretty easy to get your hands on in-game. The Arrow is really great in this way since it can be rented at either Loreville or Area 18 for I believe under 20,000 credits, and if you want to buy it outright, it's just under 1 million credits at Astra Armada in Area 18. The Gladius costs a bit more at close to 1.2 million credits at the new deal in Loreville, but I'd say both of these are very reasonable prices for the amount of ship you get. If you don't have a dedicated combat ship, both of these are very capable for both PvE and PvP, and I don't think you'll be disappointed with either. Now if you want to see what loadouts I'd run for these ships, I have them linked down below, but that's not really the point of this video, and also with this massive capacitor change coming that's going to affect flight performance, shield performance, and energy weapon performance, a lot of this is probably going to change as well. With 3.14, it looks like the plan is for energy weapons to have a limited supply of rounds that regenerate over time, so this will give ballistics an edge in shorter fights, and also mean that if you're using energy weapons, you'll have to choose when to shoot now. So yeah, there's going to be a whole lot changing in 3.14, just like John Crew said. But yeah, the stock loadouts on both of these are fine, I guess. Both of them have inconveniently inefficient military drives, so I would swap those out if you're going to be traveling any sort of long distance with these. And I don't recommend running gimbals for PvE like the Arrow has stock, since that just unnecessarily limits your firepower. But other than those two slight annoyances, there's nothing that wrong with either of their stock loadouts, and they're definitely usable in their stock configurations. Now, as to which one is my favorite, I personally prefer the Arrow a bit right now. With NPC bounty missions, you're often going up against much bigger ships with a ton of firepower, so having one shield generator versus two doesn't seem like too much of a drawback, considering that if you get hit much at all in either a Gladius or an Arrow, you're going to get melted pretty quickly either way, when you're going up against stuff like Valkyries, or those Hurricanes with their annoying scatterguns. But yeah, at the moment, I've really been enjoying flying the Arrow, and I also got this cool skin in-game, so that kind of swayed me a bit. But the Gladius definitely has its own perks. First of all, like I always bring up, it's one of the main ships that you're going to use in Squadron 42, and because of that, its development is usually fast-tracked compared to other ships. So this means right now it has all sorts of features that'll be coming to other ships eventually, but this just has them first. This fully animated flight readying sequence is very cool, and then the massive amount of flaps and access panels on this thing are pretty fun to mess around with, and it'll definitely be ready for physicalized components when that gets put in the game. It even looks like it might be getting a personal inventory container in time for 3.14, but we'll have to wait and see on that. And also, Aegis seems to be one of the first manufacturers to be getting its own unique HUD design with the new canvas sliced HUDs that are coming with 3.14. So there's all sorts of bells and whistles on the Gladius. But yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with either of these ships. Either of them is capable of doing pretty much any NPC combat mission, as long as you do enough dodging, and doing those missions is a very fun and engaging experience in these smaller ships, especially if you normally only fly larger stuff like constellations. With these ships, you can literally fly circles around most enemies. And actually with the new way bounty hunting missions work, where you have to fly around 35 kilometers to get to your target, they can let you complete those missions faster, even though they have a little bit less firepower than some of those larger ships do. Now, the balance between these two fighters is going to be refined over time, but if you choose based off of what style you prefer, either slightly more agile but less durable, or slightly more durable but less agile, I think you'll be happy. Speaking of balance, both the Gladius and the Arrow have been around for a while, and they've been through a lot of changes to their tuning and balancing as the game itself has changed, and actually that's one of the reasons I wanted to make this video now, because we're about to see another big change to the flight model and how combat works in Star Citizen with that new capacitor system that's going to be coming with 3.14. So while I do think the role that the Arrow and the Gladius each play will be the same going forward, of being light fighters with slightly different elements to them, it might be achieved in a different way with these new gameplay elements. So I think it'll be nice to have a reference to compare to the new versions of these ships in 3.14 with the capacitors coming online. So I've been going through all the clips of just accelerating in a straight line with both of these ships, both with and without Afterburner, and hopefully this will be a decent point of comparison for the changes that are coming, at least to see if there's any sort of flight model changes. I don't think that the non-Afterburner performance will change, but I want to check and see on that. But one thing that definitely will be changes is you'll have a limited amount of boost instead of just being able to Afterburn until you overheat in 3.14. Now I did do runs here where I just held down Afterburner until the engines shut off, since neither of these ships can reach their top speed without overheating if you hold it down, and I also did one where I just tried to reach that top speed as quickly as possible. But yeah, I'll be interested to see how this changes with 3.14. Do you think they're going to try to make the new system have similar performance to the current implementation, or do you think we're going to see them making boosting faster or slower overall? I'm not quite sure what to expect, but I do hope some of the changes incentivize closer range combat at lower speeds. This is always going to be a hard thing to get feeling organic, rather than something that just seems like an artificial limitation, especially in a game like this where ship top speeds are so high. But high speed combat just doesn't seem that fun at the moment, since you generally end up jousting and hardly ever see your opponent, and any maneuvering that you have to do is just to face towards them and bump up your throttle again. Now, this isn't really a problem to do with these ships specifically, but I do wonder if these changes are going to do anything more than just simplify power management to be accessible for use in combat situations. Again, I want to hear what all of you think of this as well. What direction do you hope they'll go in, and what do you actually expect them to do? Alright, so that's about all I have for this video. Both of these ships are great light fighters, and while I don't expect their overall capabilities to change in 3.14, they just might feel a bit different to fly with these new capacitors, and achieve those results in a slightly different way. What are you guys expecting though? Do you think the capacitors are really just going to affect power-related stuff, or do you think flying in 3.14 is going to be a whole new experience? Whatever we get, I'm just excited to see those clouds on Crusader. Now I want to thank my supporters, Starlit Domina and GreatWatch93. Thank you so much for supporting the channel, and if you guys want to help me out, you can do that by hitting the like or subscribe button, or if you really want to support me, you can do that by becoming a channel member with that join button. I really appreciate all of you. Thanks for watching!